It's a goal that has eluded many of our countrymen in Mindanao for so long. How can their children run across school grounds instead of running away from gunfire? When will they see lasting development instead of business ventures always rebuilding from scratch because of unrest?
Today, we will have a conversation about a people's dream. We will talk about peace. We will talk about our nation. I'm Lexi Schultz.
And I'm Ces Orenia Drilon. This is ANC Presents Bangsamoro and Beyond, a national conversation, a Kasama Dialogue series. From what comprises the Bangsamoro territory to how power will be shared to the so-called normalization, here are 5 important things you need to know about the Bangsamoro Peace Agreement. After 17 years of negotiations, government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front have finally reached a peace deal, the Comprehensive Agreement on the Bangsamoro, which establishes a new political entity called the Bangsamoro to replace the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. Here are 5 important things you need to know about the historic deal. The Bangsamoro will potentially be slightly larger than ARMM, comprised of Basilan, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, Lanao del Sur, and Maguindanao provinces. The proposed territory also includes 6 municipalities in Lanao del Norte, 39 barangays in 6 municipalities in North Cotabato, and the cities of Isabela in Basilan and Cotabato in Maguindanao. A plebiscite will be held in all these areas to determine whether they will join the Bangsamoro. Part of what sets the Bangsamoro apart is its parliamentary form of government. Citizens of the Bangsamoro will vote for members of parliament representing different political parties. A ministerial government will then be formed from among the elected members of parliament. But until duly elected officials of the Bangsamoro assume their posts in 2016, an interim government will be in place. Officials assert that the Bangsamoro setup is consistent with a charter, which allows autonomous regions to define the structure of government. Another salient feature of the peace deal is how power will be shared between the Bangsamoro and the national government. The Bangsamoro's exclusive powers include health and education policy, while the national government will retain sovereign powers, including foreign relations, currency, and national defense. A Bangsamoro police force will handle the peace and order situation, but these policemen will still be under PNP's command. The Bangsamoro government keeps 75% of the taxes it collects, while 25% of the taxes go to the national government. It will also get the larger share of income derived from natural resources, while revenues derived from fossil fuels will be shared equally with the central government. After 4 years, revenue generated by the Bangsamoro will be deducted from the block grant it receives from national government. One of the trickiest parts of the deal is the process of normalization, wherein the MILF commits to lay down its firearms and decommission its military arm. It may sound like a tall order, and all parties know there's still much work to be done. But the end goal remains clear, the promise of lasting peace in Mindanao.
So many people have suffered for so long. So many of our stakeholders have worked so hard to arrive at this point. I will not let peace be snatched from my people again.
With us are Secretary Ging Deles, the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, Ghazali Jafar, first Vice Chair of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and retired General Emmanuel Bautista, who is now the Director of the Cabinet Cluster on Security, Justice, and Peace. Good day to the three of you. Well, our task is to bring clarity to what may be a very complex issue to our people. And so we start, Secretary Deles, with a very simple question. What is the Bangsamoro, and why do we need a comprehensive agreement?
Well, maybe we start with the second question. Why do we need a comprehensive peace agreement? Because there has been a long-drawn armed conflict in this area of the country, and there are, of course, other armed conflicts, and which has undergone protracted fighting, protracted negotiations, and it is now time, and we are very happy. We think we are at the brink of an era of peace, having signed the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro. The Bangsamoro actually is a term that will be used in several ways. It is the name of the new political entity that will be put into place there. It is the name of the people that will so ascribe based on their being able to trace their lineage to the time of conquest. And it is also the name of the territory. And it is the name of the territory. I think most important, it is the term that has been chosen to define the identity of the place, the people there, the place. It speaks of the history, which is recognized in our Constitution, that there are two parts of the country which have a distinctive cultural and historical heritage with shared social and governance structures. And therefore, it is in these places where the Constitution says you may have autonomy.
Let me go to Vice Chair Jafar. How committed are you to peace, and why should we trust you?
First, allow me to greet my Muslim brothers.
Of course.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good day. We are committed to peace because we have gone as far as this long. We have been, the Philippine government have been negotiating with the Bangsamoro people for 37 years, more than 37 years to be exact. And I think this is the longest negotiation in the world. The solution to the Bangsamoro issue is not yet in the hands of the Bangsamoro people. We still don't know whether we can have the right solution or the solution to the Bangsamoro issue at this point in time. But we can wait, and we will wait, inshallah. Now, as to the issue whether you can trust us, I think you have to force yourself to trust us. Because we live in the same country. Even if Bangsamoro government is established, yet we are still under, we are under the government of the Republic of the Philippines. We are not independent. The issue here is, how do you love us? Because the feeling now among the Bangsamoro people, I believe greater majority of the Bangsamoro people feel that you don't love them, honestly and sincerely. What they feel is that what you love is the homeland of the Bangsamoro people and the wealth of the Bangsamoro people. So
I guess
ito
what
ngayon,
you're trying to say is we're all in this together. It's
That's
not
correct.
just your struggle, it's every Filipino's.
That's one. And the point here is, that is why there is a negotiation. The Bangsamoro issue is the desire of the Bangsamoro people to have a government of their own. Kahit na itong gobyerno na ito hindi hiwalay sa Pilipinas. Sa ilalim pa rin ang poder ng gobyerno ng Pilipinas. At inulit ko, wala kaming balak na humiwalay sa gobyerno ng Pilipinas, maliban ko hindi na ninyo kami mahal.
Mahal po namin kayo.
Marami pong salamat.
Maybe I should also ask the same question of General Bautista. You lost your father to Muslim rebels. Why should we trust them?
My father died for peace and for unity among us Filipinos. And I, his son, should not turn my back against that. There is no other way. We have to trust each other. We have to move forward. We've been fighting for so long already, for more than 4 decades. A lot of suffering on our people, and a lot of us losing family and friends. And as I said, I told my colleagues that is our motivation for winning the peace. We have to end all of this suffering. We have to end the killings. And that is why when we crafted the internal peace and security plan Bayanihan, one of our strategic goals is a negotiated political settlement so that we all realize that pursuing armed struggle is futile and will be to the detriment of all of us.
Secretary Deles, the President has called ARM a failed experiment. Why did it fail, and why will the Bangsamoro not fall into the same kind of pattern?
Chair Iqbal, during one of the hearings in Congress, put a certain perspective to this comment. He said the statement that the ARM was a failed experiment is to state the fact that, in fact, it had not ended the armed conflict. But also we say that, that in fact, in the history of the ARM, there had been moments of really sheer failure of governance. And so when we restarted the negotiations, the President gave four instructions. And this is in our Philippine Development Plan that says there that the President said, of course, negotiation should be within the framework of the Constitution and within its flexibilities. But second, we should learn from the lessons of the past. Therefore, we needed to study what had in fact been achieved, what were the complaints of people. Third, that we should implement everything that we sign. Not to sign anything, no false promises here. Anything that we sign, we will do. And finally, that there would be broad consultations. On that basis, having studied what was there, in fact, there were very few people that were happy with the ARM. The MNLF wanted the law to be amended. And this is what we, in the negotiated political settlement that has been achieved with the MILF, has tried to look at that and learn the lessons and put into place some of those things that constitute major concerns. From the political agreement to the achievement of the Bangsamoro, legally put into place by law and after plebiscite and with elections, is that it would be a full partnership between the government and the MILF. And that is why you will see, as in the first hearing in Congress, that for the first time, and I had raised this, the MILF and the GPH were on the same side, only one presentation, and that we said we would be there every time that we were needed. The MILF comes to hearings when they are called, they answer questions, because we are going to do this in partnership.
I'd like to ask the two gentlemen where it failed and why won't yours fail? Why won't the Bangsamoro fail?
Gusto ko pong magpahayag ng pinakasimpleng dahilan
Opo.
at maintindihan ng Filipino people. Sa amin pong pananaw, unang-una kaya naging bigo ang ARM sapagkat hindi ito tinanggap ng nakararami sa Bangsamoro. This is also the reason why kung bakit gusto namin meron magandang BBL, Bangsamoro Basic Law. This is the only assurance for our people to support us. We pray and we appeal to good Congressman Rufus Rodriguez here and iba pa mga congressman to approve this into law. There is no Bangsamoro Basic Law. There is no Bangsamoro government. And if there is no Bangsamoro government, I think situation in Mindanao remain status quo. Kung walang BBL, walang Bangsamoro Basic Law, Sa palagay po ba ninyo, bibitiwan ng mga Bangsamoro ang kanilang baril? This is to be very frank with you. Palagay ko, hindi po mayayari yun. At pag nanatili yan, nandyan, hindi matatahimik ang Mindanao.
Pero kung nakasaad ang decommissioning and the proper phase, you will.
Well, meron na pong napagkasunduan kami with the government tungkol sa decommissioning. Meron pong
turnover ng firearms.
Turnover ng firearms.
Di ba ang tawag natin na symbolic?
Tawag symbolic pero totoong reserved and
Opo.
powers and high-powered weapons.
Opo.
Symbolic dahil pasimula. Hindi
Opo.
pa ito yung buong decommissioning. Pero totoo ho yung mga crew-served at high-powered weapons na ito turn over.
Symbolic po yan, opo.
Within this year ho.
Confidence building.
Opo, at
measure.
nasa natin na magpatuloy yan. Kung meron kaming ibigay na symbolic, kasi magbigay kami ng armas, yung gobyerno dapat meron din symbolic sa panahon yun.
Yung normalization at yung political track of putting the Bangsamoro into place through the law, dapat yan magkasabay.
Opo.
Hindi pwedeng...
That's correct.
Hindi papayag ang gobyerno na yung political track up to the Bangsamoro will proceed na walang normalization and decommissioning. And on the other hand, hindi rin sila papayag na magta-turn over ng weapons na yung political track mo hindi na umandar. So talagang magkasabayan.
Kaya po hindi umubra yung arm. Sapagkat hindi po malaya yung arm. Wala pong karaya ng arm.
Let me call in Lexi Schultz, who's monitoring the conversation on social media. Lexi, what do you have for us?
Thanks for that, Says. Here are a few questions from Twitter. G. Marco de la Torre asks, why does the plebiscite on this proposed law cover only certain areas, yet the budget will come from national government?
It's a constitution that says that in the plebiscite for the creation of the autonomous region, you ask only the areas that are affected, that are covered. You only ask the areas who have the option to be part of it. So sa Cordillera, the Cordillera provinces and area, and so with Muslim Mindanao. Why should national government spend for this? Because it is the whole country. This is of interest to the entire country. Peace. You cannot say that this peace and development will only be for that area, therefore they should spend for it.
Why should people from Luzon, for instance, Visayas, care about what's going on there? It seems that there is some kind of a detachment from this question alone. Ayaw niyang saluhin ng national government ang budget.
The impact of armed conflict affects all of us. When there is armed conflict, and the armed forces have to be called in, and the Philippine National Police have to be called in order to contain, in order to fight, in order to overcome the violence, that is national money.
Sean wonders if the Bangsamoro leaders would sign a promise that they will never secede from the Philippines, while Ken also has a question, why do they need to separate from the national government? Don't they have a governor, a congressman, and a mayor? And finally, a comment from Facebook. The Bangsamoro, just like the Tripoli Agreement, is backed by good intentions. However, every loophole in the Bangsamoro Basic Law is like a wound leaking blood in a sea full of sharks. Opportunists can mess this up like what they did to the ARMM. At the end of the day, a perfect blueprint doesn't guarantee perfect execution.
Now, let me answer that in a very simple way. Kahit na pumirma si Brother Murad, myself, another top leaders of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, at lahat ng mga leaders ng Bangsamoro people involved sa struggle, ipirma kami ngayon. Kung hindi rin maganda ang trato ng gobyerno sa amin in the future, that will not prevent the future generations of the Bangsamoro people to think about their future.
Why do you need a separate entity when there are governors, there are mayors, there are all these local officials? Why do you need a separate entity?
Gusto rin namin magkaroon ng magandang karsada katulad niya sa Luzon. At magandang development katulad niya sa Luzon at Visayas. And I think we are lag behind more than 50 years as far as, the development between here and in our place.
Do you think that this peace process is inclusive enough to attract the MNLF leaders, Tausug leaders, to participate in this big process of attaining the peace in Mindanao?
Thank you for your question, Father Calvo.
When this government took office, we had and we continue to have a peace table with the MNLF. That was the tripartite review of the implementation of the 1996 agreement. From this process, there were 42 consensus points on the amendments that they wanted to RA 9054. The substance of these consensus points are in fact addressed in the Bangsamoro Basic Law. And we do know that at this time, there are MNLF leaders who are ready and authorized to engage in the process of making the law. The legislative process is difficult, but we don't give up. We are there. All of the commitments in normalization, that will happen as well. And normalization will look at the guns, not just of the MILF, but the guns of all of the other parties there. If people begin to see that there is a community and multiple communities working for the same goal, trying to bring in development, trying to bring in services, working on the welfare of the people, that more and more of those who are holding back will see, do I want to still be not part of this? Or shouldn't I rather be part of it? Because if I don't, then this whole thing, this whole project will move forward and I will be left behind and it will just be my own fault.
Up next, we'll be joined by Archbishop Antonio Ledesma, KPMG's Noel Bonoan, and Professor Jurma Tikmasan, who advises the Transition Investment Support Plan of the ARMM. Stay with us. This is ANC Presents Bangsamoro and Beyond, a national conversation, a Kasama Dialogue Series.
Ito ho ba ay talaga bang positibo na ba itong magkakaroon ng katugunan itong BBL or ang tinatawag nating Bangsamoro Basic Law? Para ho malaman namin kung ano ho talaga ang standing namin, lalong-lalo na ho sa aming mga estudyante.
Ipaintindi lang po sa mga Christian, especially sa mga Christian, kasi yung sa mga kapatid nating Muslim, naiintindihan na nila yon kung ano yung basic law.
Dapat ang ilahang masulod aning basic law should be compliant, faithful, and consistent with the comprehensive agreement. We don't want to go back to our experience in the 1996 peace agreement.
If the Bangsamoro Basic Law is passed and is seen as acceptable by the citizenry and passed in a plebiscite, then we will be on the road to peacefully addressing grievances that Muslim minorities have. Once that happens, then it's possible for the peace and order situation to rapidly improve, which in turn makes it easier to do economic activities and leads people to have a better life down there.
Everyone agrees that we need lasting peace and prosperity in Mindanao. But what exactly are the social implications of this peace pact to women, children, and non-Muslims? What does it mean for businesses? Let's take a look. What if you had to uproot your family every few years because of fighting in your hometown? What if your children had to stop studying because their school had been destroyed in violence? What if you couldn't find gainful employment or had to keep rebuilding your business from scratch because it was constantly being disrupted by unrest? For the people of Mindanao, these are not rhetorical questions. These are realities that they have been living with for decades. Their economic development stymied by violence, their individual and collective productivity hampered by constant upheaval. Government data shows that several provinces in Muslim Mindanao rank among the country's poorest, with the least access to basic services and social infrastructure, including electricity, water, and health services. The autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao has the highest poverty incidence in the country. In the 2010 NSO census, The ARMM had the lowest literacy rate at 82.5% and the lowest school attendance rate at 59.3%. Among the provinces, Sulu had the lowest literacy rate, while Basilan had the lowest school attendance rate. Many experts say the region's poor economic performance and low enrollment and literacy rates are direct results of the cycle of conflict and crisis in Mindanao. A cycle that the government and the MILF now hope to end as they work toward the passage of the Bangsamoro Basic Law and the creation of the Bangsamoro political entity. Now imagine silencing the guns of Mindanao permanently and harnessing the energies of some 4.8 million people in the region, including its women folk, long marginalized. Imagine giving them a stake in the region's future development and their just share in its fruits. Imagine expanding their access to healthcare, education, sanitation, and electricity, and other basic services. In March this year, work began on the formulation of the Bangsamoro Development Plan, a roadmap for the short and medium-term development of Bangsamoro areas. This and similar initiatives from the government and MILF sides, as well as major partners from the EU, Japan, Australia, and multilateral development agencies, are helping to create the conditions to promote inclusive growth and job creation in the future Bangsamoro region. But much more work remains to be done by all the stakeholders. And with the hopes and welfare of Mindanao's people riding on the success of the Bangsamoro deal, it's vital to ensure that we get it right. And with us, our former Finance Undersecretary Noel Bonoan. He's now Vice Chairman of KPMG Philippines and advises large multinational companies and trade organizations. We also have with us Archbishop Antonio Ledesma of the Metropolitan Archdiocese of Cagayan de Oro. He is also the co-chair of the Philippine Ecumenical Peace Platform. And we're also joined by Professor Jurma Tikmasan, who advises the Transition Investment Support Plan of the ARMM. She also chairs Nisa Ulhak Fi Bangsamoro, an all-women NGO based in Zamboanga City. Good day to the three of you. Let me start with Noel. Will investments immediately pour into Mindanao as a result of the formation of a Bangsamoro entity, political entity?
Well, let me first say, that I think peace in and by itself is a dividend. No? The challenge is to reinvest that dividend into something that will yield something more tangible. No? Now, the question about whether investments will immediately pour into Muslim Mindanao, I can say that will take some time. Clearly, what has to be done, and I advise a number of investors, they would be looking at some very basic things. They would be looking at peace, order, security, and most important of all, good governance. With whatever and everything that good governance comes with. Yes, it has to be demonstrated. There clearly is a direct relationship between good governance and the robustness of a country's or a juridical entity's economy. And this has been shown in quite a number of studies. On the other hand, some very rich resource areas are what you would call basket cases. I think you've heard of the term resource curse, where resources are not put to proper use, where there is no governance in their utilization, where resources benefit essentially a very few elite. So going back to your question, will investments pour into Muslim Mindanao? Yes, they will, but it certainly has to be with a very proactive view. The Bangsamoro government has to take a very proactive approach to attracting investments.
What about the entire Philippines? How would the rest of the country benefit?
The majority of defense spending is actually centered in Muslim Mindanao. So the short-term effects are, if you have peace in Mindanao, you can reduce military spending and divert this to other necessary other necessary expenses,
expenditures.
social expenditures. You can devote it to national security. You can devote it to education. No? So that's from a very short-term perspective. That is where you will start seeing benefits. From a long-term perspective, Muslim Mindanao has only contributed 0.7% to the Philippine GDP, and that by any stretch is so low. And that's paradoxical because it is a region very rich in natural resources. There is a potentially, there is a young population. The majority of the population is actually between 9 years old and 18 years old, if I recall the stats. In the future, once they start being more educated, once they have spending power, this could be a potential market for Manila businesses or businesses from the rest of the Philippines.
Let me ask Archbishop here. Do the Catholics support the Bangsamoro Basic Law?
Yes, we certainly do. And in fact, over the past years, we have also been having this interreligious dialogue between bishops and ulama. Bishops consisting also of both Catholic and Protestant bishops. And for me, that is also part of maybe the missing element in the peace agreement, that we have to bring in the spiritual dimension, that both religions are religions of peace. And in fact, the challenge, I think, for this Bangsamoro peace agreement to continue is to bring it down to the grassroots. And this is, again, a particular role of religious leaders. Mm-hmm. About 3 years ago, the Bishops' Ulama Conference, of which I am a member, also sponsored what we call the Consult Mindanao. And the summary of the findings there, after consulting many groupings in the whole area of Mindanao, could be summarized in 6 S's. Mm-hmm. The first one was the need for sincerity. What Mr. Gapar was saying, and yourself, do you trust me? Do I trust you? Sincerity is important. A second one would be also in terms of security, the need for not relying on arms or armed groups, but to bring about a sense of security for everyone. And the third S is sensitivity, to be sensitive to the cultural identities of both Muslims, Christians, and also indigenous peoples in the area. The fourth S is on solidarity, that we are one nation, we are one people despite the cultural and historical differences, and we have to work together. And the fifth S is what I mentioned earlier, the need for spirituality. We have to plumb the spiritual roots of Islam and Christianity in building a peace agreement. And the final S is, I think, about this basic law now, the need for sustainability, that we have to have laws that will also clarify and delineate the way of bringing about the Bangsamoro entity and how to have a lasting peace.
For instance, when the plebiscite is being held prior to the plebiscite, you would campaign for a yes vote.
Yes, we would, in the sense that we would say that this is really part of our own advocacy for peace. Mm-hmm. It has already been said that this might be really the last chance to have a formal, lasting peace agreement.
Chirma, you were nodding your head that, about this being the last chance, possibly, at peace. You work a lot. You worked for many years with women. And could you address how they could participate in politics, for instance? Do you see a path for women?
Working with women, I could claim like I truly represent the grassroots women, spending most of my life in the conflict-affected areas, but I do not claim to know everything that they know. I cannot claim to know all the experiences that we've gone through. And as you were saying, I was nodding my head at what Father was saying, because definitely the contribution of women is most important in the road to peace. Mm-hmm. There are many misconceptions about what women can do and cannot do. And Bangsamoro women are no different from the other women of the world. We suffer from the same issues. There is a perception that, in fact, the Bangsamoro women have certain advantages over the other women because religiously we were given, ideally that is, we were given special attention by our religion. Unfortunately, however, there are lived realities that are not in agreement with the ideal, and this is what we are trying to list down. And as our contribution to those who are working for peace, so that we should not be missing out on the actual realities on the ground.
Is there a possibility to be an assemblyman, for instance, to be a minister in the new parliamentary form of government? Do you see that happening?
I would like to believe yes. And in fact, we're working towards that, the attainment of that goal, except that there are certain still misconceptions that we have to be clarified with. Most of us, it's popularly believed in the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, like women cannot lead. That's the popular belief. But we have made consultations over the years with our Muslim religious leaders, and they have given us answers like women can actually lead, except for certain conditions. We wanted to challenge the existing practice of putting people there just because they belong to certain clans. And as far as good governance is concerned, we would like to put in new blood so that the spirit of newness would be able to make some good contribution to this new governance that we're looking forward to.
How would you convince other Christians who are perhaps still resistant to the Bangsamoro Basic Law?
I think that is still an open challenge to many of us religious leaders that we have been engaging in interreligious dialogue, and we find that both Christian and Muslim religious leaders are certainly advocating for peace. But I think now there is also need for intra-faith dialogue, that even among Christians themselves, there is need to converse and talk about our biases and to purify these biases, because
to admit them and address them.
To admit, yes, and to make sure that these are clarified, because the basic problem really would be for some Christians to have stereotyped notions about Muslims, about indigenous people, and perhaps that also refers to Muslims having certain stereotype of images about Christians. So we need also that kind of intra-faith dialogue among our own religious communities.
Are you doing that? Not yet.
Yes, we have started that.
How? How is the setup?
In a way, it's really getting local Christian members of a community together to talk about the peace process and also to ask ourselves what is our own views about this.
Let me go first to Lexi to bring us a question from the audience.
I am Vicente Lau from the Mindanao Business Council. There has been a lot of expectation from the business sector to bring in investment into the Bangsamoro. But in the advent of a very strong influence of the shadow economy in the Bangsamoro, wherein you have a lot of kidnappings, gun running, and drugs, how do you intend to encourage investment into the Bangsamoro with this kind of environment present as of the moment?
That's a very interesting question. First of all, I think the Bangsamoro leadership has to take a scan and see what their weaknesses, see what their strengths and weaknesses are. If they were my clients, I would say, look, these are your strengths. 60% of regional GDP of Mindanao comes from agriculture. What does that tell you? Agriculture is on the ground. There are large-scale farming projects in the region. There is the know-how for running agricultural projects. The climate and the terrain is suited for agriculture. So I would say, get into agriculture, encourage agriculture. And I would tell agriculture investors to say, this is the place that you should be setting up. So clearly that's a strength. Then look at your weaknesses. Some of those weaknesses you can take advantage of some of those weaknesses. I'll give an example. Infrastructure and construction spend in Muslim Mindanao is only 1% of regional GDP. That is such a low portion of GDP. Now, what does that tell you? Infrastructure is critical. Infrastructure is needed. Infrastructure will be the backbone of encouraging the development of other industries. No? So it would encourage later on the services industry. It would encourage later on manufacturing. So to go back to the question about how would we advise people to make their investments, or on the flip side of it, how should the Bangsamoro position itself? Don't try to target every sector. Just try to target 3 critical sectors. I've already said agriculture, infrastructure, and let me add a third, education. Those would be the 3 areas I would expect investment should be made.
So those 3.
Those 3. And let me say something about education. It leads to a virtuous cycle because you would need to place these people in jobs.
So prioritize.
Yes.
There you have it, Vice Chair. You've advice. Free advice. Well, we thank the 3 of you, and we'll be seeing you again in the next gap. Up next, why should all Filipinos care about the Bangsamoro Peace Pact? The conversation continues when we return. This is ANC Presents Bangsamoro and Beyond, a national conversation, a kasama dialogue series.
Sana po, suportahan po ninyo ang draft resolution ng BBL dahil alam po namin na malaki ang maitutulong niyan sa kapayapaan sa Mindanao. Yan lang ang tanging pag-asa na makamit natin ang buong kapayapaan ng Mindanao.
Dapat ito ay hindi maitutupad bilang isang batas. Ang karapatan ng ating mga Muslim brothers and sisters, lalong-lalo na ang kababaihan, ay maapektuhan talaga.
Ang habol ng mga residents or businessmen, yung magkaroon ng lasting peace sa atin dito.
Kahit wala akong makuhang benepisyo, basta lang po maging peaceful at hindi daranasin ng aming mga anak ang dinanas namin mula martial law hanggang ngayon.
Once we have peace in Bangsamoro, we expect that there will be a lot of economic development. Then we are able to develop the area, and there's peace, there's internal development, then foreign investors can come in. It will enlarge the scope of the development. So the entire Mindanao will be developed, and then if the Mindanao is developed, the entire country will also receive the benefits of development of Mindanao.
The international community has supported efforts to bring lasting peace to Mindanao. Supporters of this peace pact, after all, believe what's good for Mindanao is good for the rest of the country. Let's watch this. A significant step on the long road to peace in Mindanao. The signing of the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro in March this year was recognized and lauded across the globe.
U.S. officials say ISIS numbers some 15,000 active fighters, while Iraqi analysts believe they may have 3 times that number.
In a world of conflict, in an era of growing extremism and brutality, not just in the Middle East, but in Asia as well. From a national security standpoint,
of the concerns I have.
Moager Iqbal, chairman of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, believes passing the Bangsamoro Basic Law will not only end the long suffering of the Bangsamoro people, foster unity, usher in economic development, it will also help shield the region and the country against rising radicalism. He's also assured lawmakers the Bangsamoro entity will not divide the country, but instead will unify it.
What divides a country is neglect, lack of respect, and lack of appreciation of diversity. What unites a country is respect and celebration of the richness of our different histories, cultures, and faiths. This is what the Bangsamoro brings.
The international community also recognizes the importance of the comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro, not just for the long-term economic development and security of the Philippines, but as a positive example that can provide inspiration elsewhere in the region and beyond. It believes what's good for Mindanao will ultimately be good for the rest of the country.
People who say to me, well, could Bangsamoro become another Scotland and leave the Republic? But if, as we expect and as we hope, that people's education, health, livelihoods, and the way they actually contribute to this nation is appreciated and grows, the question doesn't even arise because people don't leave a happy home. This is undoubtedly a very inspiring and successful model for not only the Philippines, but also for other parts of the world which are in desperate need of this kind of inspiring exercises in the procurement of peace for its population. We all need this success, not only for the Filipino people, but also because there are so many conflicts throughout the world that will obviously benefit from these achievements.
And if it will be good for the rest of the country, it's incumbent on all Filipinos to work together for the success of the Bangsamoro.
The struggle of the Moro Liberation Front is a national case. It's not just a Mindanao case. It has international repercussions. And necessarily, if you want to have peace in the whole country, you have to take into account Mindanao.
Lawmakers have given their assurance that they will pass the Bangsamoro Basic Law as soon as possible, paving the way for the creation of the Bangsamoro political entity.
All of us are Filipinos. We are brothers and sisters. We must therefore help each other in order to come up with the ultimate solution to the decades of conflict in Mindanao.
Today, the Bangsamoro Basic Law is in the hands of Congress. But once the law is passed, the future of the Bangsamoro and its people will be the collective responsibility of all Filipinos. Now let me ask General Bautista, how is this a deterrent to what is seen or feared as a rising extremism in some parts of Mindanao? How will the Bangsamoro help?
Any insurgency takes roots from issues. There are core issues that are being used to agitate our people to join the armed struggle. And therefore, whatever group or motivation there is, we have to address these core issues. And in the case of the Bangsamoro, we have to address the core issues. Hopefully, we are pinning our hopes that this Bangsamoro Basic Law should be able to address these core issues so that no entity, nobody can ever agitate our people to join any armed struggle.
Let's take the case of Bangsamoro freedom fighters. They don't believe that the Bangsamoro issue can be addressed through negotiated political settlement. They want to settle this issue by continuously fighting and probably win military victory against the Philippine government. We don't agree to that.
But why can't you control them? They're used to be part of the MILF.
No.
When you are now governing, how will you address the BIFF?
No, they are not. BIF is no longer part of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front.
Well, used to.
That's why they bolted from the MILF, because of the long negotiations of the Philippine government with the Bangsamoro people to address the Bangsamoro issue.
You'll go after them when you have
No, because we believe in dialogue.
Hold your thought. We'll first go to questions from social media. Lexi, what do you have for us?
Okay, let me start with Isnairin. She says, I'm from Mindanao, and yes, I believe that the Bangsamoro government will bring lasting peace and prosperity. I just hope no one will spoil that goal. George thinks otherwise. He believes that there will be people who will be envious of the region's gains and sow disorder, just like what he says happened to ARMM. Ansari remains optimistic. Let's just give it a shot and not generate discord. It may be for the genesis of an avenue of religious pluralism and cultural understanding, despite of observable differences among the people here down south. Afsan says that he does not want the Bangsamoro Basic Law to even reach first base, his term, not ours. He also thinks supporters of the law do not consider themselves Filipino. And finally, Gabriel is hopeful that the Bangsamoro will bring peace, but he's not sold that it'll be a long-term solution. Looking forward to what the guests have to say about these comments. Over to you, Ces.
Thank you, Lexi. Any reaction, Secretary Deles?
Clearly, we need to still build consensus. But I think the biggest argument to win the consensus is to just keep working hard on it. We don't give up.
Noel?
One thing that stood out was whether it will be successful. No? You know, in any organization, what is critical is tone at the top. So here you have a very historic event happening. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the leaders of Bangsamoro to put their best foot forward and to ensure that it's successful. So clearly, in our organization, or in corporate organization, you would say what is important is tone at the top. They have to provide strong moral leadership. And I think after that, everything will follow.
Germa?
Popular support should not be underestimated. And this is where the women's sector can help. As I was mentioning a while ago, there's a lot of misunderstanding on the ground. And decisions are being made based on information that are not really information. There should be more of the talking points. We should be able to identify the salient feature. Why is it that we're pushing for this peace process? What are the situations that could make it happen? And how do we spread the news to everyone so that whenever they would like to make decisions, it will be based on information and correct information. The women can actually influence also decision makers, with all due respect to the leaders in the room.
Archbishop Ledesma.
I agree that the work for peace is not only from the top, but also at the grassroots level. And I would like to pinpoint specifically the students today in Mindanao. Recently, the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines had their National Assembly in Davao. And I was told that was one of the main topics on their agenda, how to also help support the Bangsamoro Peace Agreement and how to also encourage students themselves to be first aware about the issues and how to bring about interreligious dialogue at the local level. I would also appeal to the young Moro professionals that are very active in parts of Mindanao. And I think the next generation should really be our focus, that peace today is for the next generation of Christians and Muslims in Mindanao.
General Bautista.
Addressing skeptics, non-believers, and on the extreme spoilers. My task has always been to prove them wrong. We have to demonstrate that a peaceful resolution of conflict can happen, that this peace agreement can work. And we have to demonstrate that as a people. We will continue to support the peaceful resolution of conflict. You see, we've been in conflict for more than 4 decades, and we cannot go on fighting for the next 4 decades. So, as a people, we must come together and pursue the path of peace. There is no other way except that.
Secretary Deles.
Early on in the program, the question was asked, why should we trust? And for me, you should turn the question around. Where has distrust, where has skepticism brought us? We have to trust because continuing to distrust, continuing to keep away from each other has just brought us at a standstill, if not downward. Trust and faith is what moves us forward. And it is a trust that when we decide to overcome the divides between us, it in fact becomes a larger, more beautiful world for all of us. I just want to say I'm a new grandmother.
Oh, congratulations.
And I want my grandson to know a world where he does not treat and look at anyone as an enemy, as going to be different. I want my grandson to grow up in a Philippines that recognizes and appreciates, and he can say that so many kinds of Filipinos, it makes a more beautiful world for him and his future. That is what we keep away from when we refuse to overcome distrust. Thank you.
Thank you. So beautifully said. Vice Chair.
Okay, thank you. Modesty aside, una ina-address ko ito doon sa mga kapatid ko mga Bangsamoro. Araw-araw sa pamumuno sa struggle ng Bangsamoro people, iniisip namin ano ang makabubuti sa Bangsamoro people. Tinaya namin aming buhay. Kami lahat anak ng mga mahirap. At yung pagiging mahirap namin, lalo naging mahirap kami sapagkat kinalimutan namin ang paghanap buhay. Maaari kung hindi kami nag-struggle, pwedeng mga plantation owner kami ngayon. Pero binaliwala namin yon sapagkat nakita namin na kailangan ng Bangsamoro people mayroon mamuno sa kanilang struggle. Itong struggle ng Bangsamoro people hindi ito anti-Christians. Hindi ito religious war. Wala kaming hiling sa inyo na mga Pilipino, Christian brothers. Kundi baka pwede naman humingi sa inyo na kahit katiting, konting pagmamahal lamang. Ito lamang hinahinga namin.
Marami pong salamat, Vice Chair. Thank you to all of you panelists. Thank you so much. We thank our panelists for today's discussion. Thank you to Lexi. Thank you for bringing over the questions from our friends in social media and in our audience here at the Dolphy Theater. Over the last few decades, there have been many attempts to forge peace in Mindanao. But what we have before us is our best chance yet. Let's put it to good use. This has been ANC Presents, Bangsamoro and Beyond, a national conversation, a Kasama Dialogue series.